With SBR, we have two questions that are quite typical, question 1 and question 2. This means that our preparation should be absolutely spot on, because this is where we want to get the majority of marks. And it is vital for us because if we want to pass and still not to spend too much time on this exam, we need to be able to score the marks that are expected. So question 2 is going to have some scenario. Usually it's going to be directors that perform certain type of accounting, and you will need to challenge that. Please distinguish between two types of scenarios. One type of scenario is going to tell you explicitly that the company, let's say, has correctly accounted for it as, let's say, operating lease. If you are told that the company has correctly done something, then this means that the examiner says, look, we have so much in the standard that can be tested. I don't want to test you on this. I want to test you on that. So please don't go there. Don't discuss why this is operating lease or not operating lease. But if you are told that directors accounted for it like that, junior accountant accounted for it like that, this is not certain. Even more, most likely their approach is going to be false. And you would need to explain why, and later for question 2, you would need to talk about accounting implications, and you would need to talk about the ethical issues. I have a separate episode on ethical issues and how to challenge it and score marks. But as for accounting implications, as for reporting implications, you need to be able to talk about the ratios. The most important ratio that is going to be affected is gearing. Gearing is debt to equity. Now, what standards are going to trigger this gearing problem? If you have not applied IAS 32 financial instruments presentation correctly, if you recorded something as shares, as an equity, whereas it is supposed to be a liability. Also, if we have IFRS 16 leases, if you have not recognized lease liability, then this means that you made gearing look better than it actually is. So IFRS 16 can be tested. Financial instrument, financial assets, due recognition. If you have not due recognized financial asset properly, or actually due recognize something when you were not supposed to, then this means that your debt is going to be understated. I talked about that in a different episode when I talked about bad debt allowance. So all that is going to impact liabilities being understated. We could also be tested on IFRS 2 share-based payments. If someone recognized instruments that were supposed to be equity instrument that were supposed to be liability as equity, then again, liability is going to be understated. Another important ratio that can be misstated would be earnings per share or profit after tax. Well, it's basically the same because earnings per share is profit after tax over the number of shares, and usually number of shares does not change. So standards that are going to trigger this would be IFRS 15 revenue. This is the most important standard that we need. Also, other standards that talk about capitalization. So, for example, IAS 38. Now, profit after tax, earnings per share is tested quite frequently. As for current ratios, like current assets over current liability, not so much. We can say if this ratio was overstated, that the company looks more liquid than actually is, but this type of question does not happen very often. So usually it's either gearing or earnings per share. Now, when talking about ratios being under or overstated, please don't use these words because chances are you're going to misuse them. So for example, for gearing, if gearing is higher, it's actually worse. So better say looks better than it is, looks worse than it is. And then you are going to talk about ethical issues. I would remind you that 95% chance that you are not going to be tested on threats. So you are not going to be tested on advocacy or self-review or something like that. And instead, you're going to be tested on the 5 principles, being professional competence and due care, objectivity, and so on. But I have a separate episode about that. And if you want to be ready for this exam and know how things are tested and why, then join my course where I teach you with the view in mind that we need to pass the exam, and in order to pass the exam with less time spent studying, you need to understand how each and every part of the standard can be tested. All the links are down below. Bye!